In this Unit 4 grammar tutorial, we'll be reviewing punctuation and capitalization. Please have your Little Seagull text handy while you view this tutorial. To help you follow along in the book, chapter numbers will appear in the bottom right-hand corner of each content slide. We'll begin with chapter P1, commas, and end with chapter P8, capitalization. Let's get started. If you're like most people, you learn to place a comma at the spot in the sentence where you want your reader to pause. But the comma has more specific uses to help avoid confusion and to make your meaning clear. In the book Eats, Shoots, and Leaves, author Lynn Truss shows us how a misplaced comma can make the difference between a panda who feeds on bamboo shoots and leaves and a panda who eats dinner, shoots his host, and walks out the door. That's the type of confusion we want to avoid, as does the panda's host. Perhaps the most useful function of the comma is to join two ideas together, two independent clauses, along with a coordinating conjunction. The coordinating conjunction, and, or, but, so, yet, nor, and for, indicates the relationship between the two ideas. Here's an example from The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. What happened is that the small number of people in the small number of situations in which the police or the new social forces had some impact started behaving very differently, comma, and that behavior somehow spread to other would-be criminals in similar situations. Gladwell wants to share two pretty involved ideas with the reader, and he wants to put them together in a single sentence so that he can indicate the relationship between them. He uses the word and to show that the second idea builds upon the first idea. The relationship of the second idea to the first is one of addition. Another important use of the comma is to offset an introductory word or phrase from the main idea. By the fall of 1995, comma, things began to happen in a rush. Often, as in this case, the introductory element is an adverbial phrase which tells us when, why, or how something happened. Use a comma when you want to separate one item from the next in a list or series of items. In this example, the list includes three items: the drug trade, comma, the population, comma, and the economy. In some cases, writers will leave out the last comma in a series of three items when it's clear the last item of the list will follow the word and. However, insert the comma if the list includes more than three items, or when one or more of the items contains internal commas. You can also use the comma to offset a non-essential element, or a phrase that is not essential, from the rest of the sentence. In other words, the reader will be able to identify the subject of the sentence without the extra information. Here's an example. Wolverine, comma, the company that makes hush puppies, comma, was thinking of phasing out the shoes that made them famous. Since Wolverine is named as the subject, the phrase that tells readers that the company makes hush puppies is not really essential. The phrase merely offers some additional information about the company. We also use the comma after a transition word or phrase at the beginning of a sentence. finally, comma, both changes happened in a hurry. Transition words help you to organize sentences in a paragraph. Use them, but don't forget to include a comma. When we use quoted source material in an essay to support our main points, we must include a signal phrase to let the reader know whose words are being used, and appropriate punctuation. In this case, the writer begins with the quotation and offsets the quotation from the signal phrase with a comma. Quotation mark, "It was total word of mouth, comma, end quotation mark. Fitzgerald remembers." The same approach works when you begin with a signal phrase and end with a quotation. You need to offset the signal phrase from the quotation with a comma. The semicolon, like the comma, can be used to join two independent thoughts in a single sentence. Let's take a look at how the uses of semicolons and commas differ. First, a semicolon can be used to connect two related thoughts in a sentence when we don't need a coordinating conjunction to indicate the relationship between the thoughts. We limit this use of the semicolon to very closely related thoughts, or to add style to a sentence that balances two ideas of equal importance. In this example from Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point, the author states two ideas in separate independent clauses and joins them with a semicolon. All of the possible reasons for why New York's crime rate dropped are changes that happened at the margin, semicolon. They were incremental changes. This use of the semicolon is appropriate for essential points or when you want to emphasize two closely related ideas in your essay. Use commas to punctuate a list of items. But if one or more of the items has its own commas or internal commas, you'll need to indicate where one item ends and the next one begins with a semicolon. In this case, the semicolon is like a comma on steroids. It tells you to take a longer pause than you would for one of the internal commas or commas within one of the items in the list. Here's an example. The book contains essays by writers of different political views and cultural connections, colon, David Brooks, comma, a writer for neoconservative publications, semicolon, Malcolm Gladwell, comma, a writer for liberal publications, semicolon, and Henry Louis Gates Jr., comma, a teacher and director of the W.E.B. Du Bois Institute for African American Research at Harvard University. In this example from People Like Us, author David Brooks ends the sentence with a period. It is a common complaint that every place is starting to look the same, period. His sentence, which appears at the beginning of a body paragraph, makes a statement about communities in the United States. The end punctuation we use for a statement is a period. A question mark should come at the end of a sentence that makes a question. The question may be rhetorical, as in this case from Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point. Why is it that some ideas or behaviors or products start epidemics and others don't. The author doesn't expect his reader to answer the question on the spot, but his rhetorical question does set up some expectations about how he will shape his point in the sentences and paragraphs to follow. Last, but not least, we have the exclamation mark. Like a magic wand, an exclamation mark can bring strong emotion or emphasis to a sentence. Its magic is so strong that a writer can use an exclamation mark after a single word and yet not be guilty of committing a sentence fragment to paper. But wait! I know what you're thinking. Why not use a dozen of these magic exclamation marks in every paragraph? The reason to avoid the overuse of exclamation marks is that too many of them in a single paper may undercut your credibility. Strong sentences have a power and magic all their own, and they don't typically need an exclamation mark to make a point. An unexpected exclamation mark or a well-placed comma can make a big difference in a sentence. Sometimes the choice of punctuation can even change the meaning of a sentence. Be careful that your sentence conveys the meaning you intended. You wouldn't want to make the sort of mistake that can make the difference between life and death. Let's eat, Mom. In this case, the kids are hungry and lunch is ready. On the other hand, if we write the sentence without the comma, the meaning changes entirely. Let's eat, Mom. Bon appetit, kids. Mom's ready. In his essay, People Like Us, David Brooks mentions 3 places by name. Names, whether they be the names of people, places, or things, are proper nouns, and we capitalize them. In the Washington, D.C. area, Democratic lawyers tend to live in suburban Maryland, and Republican lawyers tend to live in suburban Virginia. Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia are all capitalized proper nouns. A professional title is capitalized when it appears before a person's name, as in this example. The first one, Representative Donna F. Edwards, Maryland 4, supports the goals and ambitions of Montgomery College students in her district. We do not capitalize a title when it appears alone or after a person's name, as in the second example. Donna Edwards, comma, the congressional representative of the state's 4th district, comma, supports Montgomery College students. We should capitalize the first word in a sentence. In this example from People Like Us, author David Brooks begins his sentence with the word human. To signal that it's the beginning of a new sentence, he capitalizes human. Human beings are capable of drawing amazingly subtle social distinctions and then shaping their lives around them. Capitalize the titles of books, essays, poems, films, television shows, newspapers, magazines, and other periodicals. Do not capitalize less important words, the articles a, an, or the coordinating conjunctions and, or, but, so, yet, for, and nor, or prepositions like in, on, to, of, and from. Here's an example of 2 titles. They tend to drive small foreign cars and to read Rolling Stone and Scientific American. Rolling Stone is the title of a periodical, as is Scientific American. For that reason, we capitalize these titles. Some of the examples of punctuation and capitalization that appear in this presentation were borrowed from the EN 101 textbook, Back to the Lake, published by Norton. Thanks for watching.